Well, during this Black History Month, we're delving into the lives of some of the region's most significant contributors. Well, tonight, we learn more about Jack Washington, whose soul music is still celebrated today. Jack Washington was born in Hamilton in 1919. He grew up in the city's north end and was one of 15 brothers and sisters. Safe to say, his home was anything but quiet, but at least it was pleasing to the ear.
Music was always part of the family, so at one time, the family was the choir at Stewart Memorial Church. So my grandmother was very strict about church. They went to church, they sang in the choir, and at an early age, Uncle Jack picked up a guitar.
Shawn Washington-Purser says when her Uncle Jack wasn't babysitting his younger siblings or shining shoes at the racetracks, he'd work at the local music bars as a washroom attendant. And while he couldn't watch the shows themselves, he still somehow got a front row seat to history.
The artists of color that weren't allowed in any of the clubs and restaurants back in the day, because that's the way it was even in Hamilton. They used to go back to my grandmother, so Uncle Jack would bring them back and my grandmother would put on a big spread, and they would get to know people like Oscar Peterson, Billie Holiday, Duke Ellington. They didn't know it at the time, but wow, did they have an educational background.
Good enough for Jack and his brothers Ormsby, Harold, and Doc to form a traveling quartet, a brave task given the racist climate of their era.
Times where the family weren't accepted in places, they weren't allowed to go in places. Uncle Jack and actually most of the Washingtons had a phenomenal outlook, whereas I'm not going to rock the boat. I am who I am. That's the way it is. But I'm going to keep pursuing what I need to do. I'm going to keep pursuing my dreams.
And while some musicians' dreams would include bright lights and international tours, Jack and his brothers wanted to build something special in Hamilton.
The Washington family, they were all hometown boys and girls. They didn't look to go outside. They looked to bring their music to Hamilton, to their friends, to the dance clubs, to the coffee houses, to some of the local bars. And that's where their music was, and that's where their heart was. So they weren't looking to make it big. They weren't looking to go elsewhere. They were looking to make Hamilton happy.
Well, I dreamed I went to Ottawa, and I sat in Mulrooney's chair.
And they did. Whenever CHCH was covering a local festival, you'd find footage of Jack captivating a crowd. Shawn says some of the best concerts, however, occurred during family gatherings.
Somebody would put a guitar in his hand, and that was when the music started. And all the brothers and sisters would put a hand to their ear, get the tuning, and everybody would be singing. And depending on whose house we were in, you'd get Uncle Reggie on the keyboards. My dad would always bring his drum with him. You'd get Uncle Donnie on the clarinet, Uncle Delbert on the bongos, Aunt Rosemary singing, and you'd be there for another 3 hours.
Sticking to his love of Hamilton, in 1948, Washington became the first black host on CHML radio, hosting his own show for 2 years. And the city showed its love for Jack later in his life, presenting him with an honorary doctorate from McMaster University. That same year, a new park in Hamilton in Ward 2 was named after him, and the John C. Holland Award for Merit now bears his name. Well, despite his collection of beloved music, which you can check out on YouTube, Shawn Washington-Purser tells us many of the Washington boys, including Jack himself, were never taught how to read music, just straight from the soul. And you could tell.